Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Stand Up. I'm so happy to have you joining me today. Thank you very much for listening, for subscribing, for telling your friends about it. I've got a great, one of our all-time favorites, guest joining me today. It's Professor Eric Segall, constitutional law professor from Georgia State University, joining me to talk about, well, what do you think? The Supreme Court, this slush fund, and so much more. You want to jump to the conversation with Segall right now and skip my headlines and clip show, which should be winning awards? You can. It begins at 37 minutes. But I'm happy to have you here for the news and clips. I work real hard each and every day to gather them, and you can always send me what you're seeing. That's super helpful. StandUpWithPete@gmail.com. I also don't want to get locked into my algorithm of news and clips as well, so it certainly does help to get it from others. You can send me things all the time that I'm not seeing or being fed by the way that it all works. So send me email me, StandUpWithPete@gmail.com for that and any of your other stand-up needs. Okay, well, let's get to what is going on here on Tuesday, June 2nd, 2026. Can you believe that we made it? Can you believe that it's June? Can you believe that it is primary day in several big states? Here are the key races to watch according to NPR. 6 states. California, Iowa, my friend Zach Wall's running for Senate there. Montana, our friend Ryan Bussey running for Congress there. In New Jersey, South Dakota, and New Mexico, they all hold elections today. Of course, most of the attention, NPR says, is on California and Iowa, where there are competitive primaries for governor. In both states, the Democratic Party also sees a roadmap to control of Congress in the fall. In California's unique primary system, voters send the top 2 vote-getters to November's general election, regardless of candidates' political parties. Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom is term-limited. California voters will also pick who should move on the general election in 5 new Democratic-leading congressional districts. Voters have more than 60 candidates to choose from in California. Only a fraction of those are considered serious contenders, and only the top 2 vote-getters will move on to the general election in November. In Iowa, Democrats have a choice between State Rep Josh Turek and my old friend, State Senator Zach Wall. Both candidates, NPR says, are courting different Iowa voters, though. Turek is vying for the independent-leaning vote, while Walz is hoping to gain the support from committed Democrats. Turek flipped a state house district held by a Republican, while Walz represents a Senate district that is solidly blue. Both argue they are the candidate who has the right message to win in November. So get out there and vote if you're in one of those states. The biggest story from yesterday is that the Justice Department said it will abide by a federal court ruling that puts the Trump administration's controversial $1.776 billion anti-weaponization fund on hold while a legal challenge plays out in court. The regime said the fund would be available to those who alleged federal government had been weaponized against them, and now that is in question. This federal judge in the Eastern District of Virginia temporarily also blocked the creation of an anti-weaponization fund after a lawsuit from Democracy Forward and others. And I interviewed, of course, Sky Perryman. So do I get credit? At least I should get credit for bringing on the best people here to explain these things and having connections to them and the power and influence to get them to talk to me and then bring it to you and produce it each and every day. Thank you for that credit. I appreciate it. And the fund has been ended because of me. You're welcome. Actually, it'll be appealed, of course, but I think they're going to probably drop it because it's just absolutely deadly. As you'll hear, Megyn Kelly and Sean Ryan, 2 right-wingers who helped Trump get elected, just absolutely destroy him coming up in the clip show. So you don't want to miss that. The way the New York Times said it was, a sign of Trump's retreat came today when the Justice Department announced that it would abide by a judge's order not to move toward activating the fund until at least June 12th, when a hearing on it is scheduled. Privately, some of administration officials expressed relief that the judge's ruling offered a way out of the situation. Trump could change his mind, but he's been leaning for days toward scrapping the fund, which has prompted widespread backlash from both Republicans and Democrats. Critics characterize the fund as a scheme to reward the president's political allies with taxpayer money. Well, that's the way the New York Times framed it in their article, but I would argue also a lot of critics framed it as a way to create and fund his own militia of former J6ers, Proud Boys, etc. In other administration news, DEI Secretary of War Pete Hegseth blocked the promotions of at least 7 Navy officers in a move that targeted women and black officers. That's an investigative article edited up by the New York Times, so you won't see it anywhere else. But the Pentagon barred reporters from its press office designating it as a classified space. Everybody's reporting on that violation of the First Amendment by the Department of War. So that's gone a bit undercovered, I think it's fair to say. Yesterday, let's get to the war in the Middle East, because General Fatton says Israel and Hezbollah will have to stop fighting. Apparently, he called Bibi Netanyahu and cursed him out, yelled at him. What are you doing? What are you doing? You crazy? I don't know exactly what he said, but it was the whole conversation was leaked, and then publicly they're like, we had a good conversation, and same with Netanyahu, but apparently that is not what happened. Yesterday, the war in the Middle East seemed likely to worsen, the New York Times says. The U.S. said it had intercepted Iranian attacks against its forces. Israel's prime minister called for new strikes against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Tehran threatened retaliation if Israel does attack. And Iran's semi-official news agency said the country would stop its negotiations with American officials and seek again to close the Strait of Hormuz. Then this afternoon, Trump declared that there would be a halt in fighting between Israel and Hezbollah. He said he'd spoken with both sides and that they would agree to not attack each other. Lebanon's government said it received confirmation that Hezbollah agreed to the U.S. proposal for the mutual cessation of attacks, but Netanyahu issued a statement leaving it unclear whether he'd agree to a truce or not. And the only thing that matters is gas prices. And so when you hear Trump saying he's sick of it and he doesn't care, he's not concerned about this anymore, he is, because the only thing that matters is gas prices. And global oil prices jumped again yesterday. And in the U.S., elevated gas prices have led even many Trump voters to question whether the war in Iran is worth the cost. How about that? Apparently, there was an explosive staff meeting in the 60 Minutes office over at CBS, and Scott Pelley accused Barry Weiss, the head of CBS News, of, quote, murdering the show. I loved reading that story yesterday. Two progressive U.S. commentators who have been harsh critics of Israel, Hassan Piker and Cenk Uygur, have been denied entrance into the country, and people on the right and left are outraged by it. Graham Plattner, the presumptive Democratic Senate nominee in Maine, defiant over reports that he sent sexual messages to women outside his marriage. So, is that a disqualifying thing to do? He didn't. He may have lied to one of those women, and it's likely he lied to his wife. Is it disqualify him as a result? Is there details of that story I'm missing? I can't wait to hear people's opinions on this, because it's a very interesting group of people that are reacting to this. I think Michael Cohen and Waj are both like, this guy's done or should be. And then so many other people are like, I would crawl across broken glass to vote for him in Maine as a result of taking back the Senate, and what that means, especially for people who are struggling and dealing with the worst that America has to offer. A magnitude 6.0 earthquake destroyed a water catchment systems across Hawaii's Big Island, crucial piece of infrastructure for farmers and coffee growers. So earthquake doing a lot of damage there. I had not heard about that. According to a new analysis, 2025 was the most economically damaging wildfire year on record. Climate change is happening now. In Canada, apparently in October, the people of Alberta, the Albertans, apparently they call themselves, they're going to vote on a referendum that could move their province toward secession. Ooh, interesting. Can't wait to talk to our friends in Canada about what they think of that. It's Pride Month, everybody. I forgot to mention that. Should have mentioned that at the top of the show, but it is June. It's Pride Month, and happy Pride Month to all of those who celebrate and support it. It's fun. I love being part of Pride Month celebrations. I love gay culture stuff. I'm happy to be in any venue where there's a bunch of gay people partying. I've done it several times. It's a lot of fun. So if there's an event in your community that you want to attend or support, I highly encourage it. Have a great, great time. A Pentagon policy in a related story is that illegally banned transgender troops from military service. Yesterday, another legal setback for the General Fatton's sweeping agenda. The majority opinion by a 3-judge panel from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District Court of Columbia Circuit held that his administration's policy was designed to exclude people from the military based on their gender identity. The ban will remain in effect for now, but what an unbelievable amount of damage he has done to some of the smartest analysts and others that are in the military by telling them they can't serve. I mean, God, this could be millions and millions of dollars invested into each one of these service members that they just canceled them. It's a preposterous, gross, and hopefully it'll be overturned because that is one of the most egregious things that they've done in terms of taking rights, in this example from LGBT folks. On yesterday, New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill defended her decision to deploy state police to quell violent unrest outside an ICE detention facility where House Democratic lawmakers who were finally allowed inside described conditions as unsanitary and unsafe, where there's a hunger strike apparently going on, and where actual detainees had to smuggle out a message to alert the public that this was happening. I didn't see this on Friday. The president gave his endorsement to a study from January by the Department of Health and Human Services led by RFK Jr. that calls for the cutting of the number of vaccines recommended for every American child. But luckily, pediatricians aren't going to buy that or support it, but it's still a horrific development. Again, one of the worst things that they've done. There's a racist convention happening in Portugal, and guess who's attending? Former Border Patrol chief and elf-like man Greg Bavino. He made an appearance at a, quote, remigration conference. Bunch of avowed racists from around the world, including people known for launching racist broadside against non-white people, Jews, and immigrants, urged their country's governments to double down on their mass deportation efforts. And how about this? James Comey's defense lawyers are probably going to want to apply this. A federal judge has ordered the National Park Service not to interfere with the liberal organization's display of an 8647 flag at its ongoing demonstration near the National Mall, rejecting the contention that the phrase was meant as a coded call for violence against President Donald Trump. Nope. U.S. District Court Judge Randolph Moss issued a 2-week restraining order Monday at the request of Accountability Now USA, which has been protesting Trump for months at a site in front of the federal courthouse on Constitution Avenue. And congratulations to those activists for their consistency and for showing up. A major Russian missile and drone attack on Ukraine killed at least 13 and toppled an apartment building. They continue to target civilian buildings. It's fucking horrific. An awful, awful, awful regime, and a war that has been going on for several years now. Over 4 years with the current full-scale invasion beginning on February 2022. Wow. And those are the headlines that I've gathered for you today. They aren't the headlines. Sometimes I say those are your headlines for today. They aren't. Those are the ones that I chose. It's important because, as I said earlier, I want to make sure that it's not just my algorithm. So you let me know what you think are the most important, impactful stories. That's how I choose to editorially pick the ones that impact the most people, and I will try to get to them. All right, that's it. Let's get to the clips I've gathered for you. Let's start with a little comedy. This is Jimmy Kimmel at the Peabody Awards. And in his acceptance speech, he mentions a whole bunch of the names that he's been calling Trump for years. And people have sometimes given credit for me, but I go from a list that Kimmel's writing staff came up with. So I appreciate that you think I'm that funny. But no, when you get a room full of the smartest people in the world working together, you come up with some pretty funny names, and you hear Kimmel bring up many of them here.
I have to say I felt pretty dumb a lot of times in my life, but I've never felt dumber than I do right now being on stage with this group of people who expose the horrors of ICE, prison abuse, and protests against the Vietnam War, a teacher who took on Putin. I called our president Fatty Shack. And Blob the Builder, and Liger Woods, and the Hungry Hungry Hypocrite, our fondling father, Mar-a-Lardo, Nelson Tandela, and Nostradamus. And somehow we got a Peabody out of that. If you didn't know it from reading the news already, this country really has gone to shit. Making jokes about the president in America shouldn't win you a prize. We have the right, guaranteed by the Constitution, to criticize and satirize our leaders. This is a right that many of us take for granted. It's one that I took for granted for the first 57 years of my life until September of last year when the FCC delivered a very unpleasant surprise. But then I experienced something that surprised me even more. I watched as millions of people, even some from across the aisle, objected. They spoke up. They marched. They canceled their subscriptions to Star Wars because they refuse to allow our freedoms to be bulldozed like the East Wing of the White House. They sent a message, you sent a message that we do care and that we will stand up and that we will not stand by when comedy and journalism and dissent are censored and regulated and criminalized. Right, Guillermo?
Right, Jimmy.
Thank you. Thank you for always having my back. Guillermo said, please make it fast, I have to pee. That is not the Peabody we are honoring here tonight. Go ahead, you can go. Yeah. Congratulations to my fellow Peabody Award recipients, all of you here on stage, all of you here in the audience. I'm honored to stand alongside you. On behalf of my coworkers, we thank you. We thank those who supported us during last year in September. Thank you to the Peabody jurors for this adorable little trophy. And thank you to Donald Trump, our commander and thief, Abraham Lincoln, Orange Julius Caesar, Greedy McGolfy, Dopey McGropey, and Pumpkin McPornhumper. Thank you for inspiring us to fight for our freedom of speech.
Indeed. Good stuff. Loved it. And still a highlight of my year, of my career, when he reached out to me, Jimmy Kimmel, directly, and said, great job and thank you, when I went on CNN to defend him and other artists and comedians. Meant so much to me that I still brag about it. I can't be modest in that one. That was a scary time last year when Kimmel was fired for a moment for all of us, and going on CNN saying what I said and the way I said it was a bit scary for me too. It was the closest I had to thinking that maybe someone, the administration would somehow target me somehow. And I'm glad they didn't. And I am still not worried that they will at this point, because I think we won that battle. I really do. I think we did. And it would be, if they do come after me, I get to text Jimmy Kimmel back and be like, guess what? Could you maybe hook a brother up? Because we help each other out. We support each other. Solidarity and brotherhood and sisterhood and whateverhood is super important to get things done. And so many people in this community are doing just that with each other in this community. And I love to see it. You love to see it. All right, let's get to the next clip. It's a very good one from Senator John Ossoff, who everybody's talking about as a possible presidential nominee for 28. But right now he's on the campaign trail to get reelected to the Georgia Senate. And when he's giving speeches like this, it certainly doesn't hurt.
This war in Iran is the worst foreign policy blunder since Iraq. And just like the Iraq war, it's a war built on lies. Let's just update the record. On day one of the war, day one, the president said it was running ahead of schedule. On day 10, he said it was very complete. Day 21, getting very close. Day 32, leaving very soon. On day 39, the President of the United States said a whole civilization will die tonight. And on the next day, day 40, he declared total and complete victory. Day 67, great progress. Day 79, the clock is ticking. Today is day 92. And on day 92, Iran's ballistic missiles and drones have not been destroyed. The Strait of Hormuz, which was open before the war, is still closed. The regime is intact, along with its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. A stockpile Iran only built after President Trump shredded President Obama's Iran deal. You remember that?
All right. There you go. Love it. And I also love this. I love right-wing influencers, the biggest in independent or corporate media, being critical of this guy, this maniac, and everybody who is part of his regime, and the movement itself, in a way. In these clips, this is Megyn Kelly and Sean Ryan, two podcasters, radio show hosts, YouTubers, whatever you want to call them, content creators, right-wing influencers who absolutely helped this fucking psycho get reelected, and probably elected the first time, talking about how terrible he is. And I don't know why they're doing this to try to garner and gain credibility with their audience, but they look terrible doing it. It's so embarrassing to watch them because we all obviously knew this was going to happen. But it's good that they're saying it, and that's why I'm sharing it.
I just don't see any positivity coming out of this administration. It seems very self-serving. I have a list of shit printed I could go through, but what was the last one? He fucking made it so he had Todd Blanche do the dirty work so that him or anybody in his family could never be audited by the IRS. What the fuck is that shit? Mm-hmm. The drone company, the $400 million jet from Qatar.
Yep.
What is it? The Executives Club. You know about that?
Yeah, that they started in D.C.
You don't hear about any of this shit.
Yeah.
Does this shit look like he's serving the fucking people? No. So you're going to serve that? Or are you going to speak out against it and let everybody know what the fuck is happening?
You think he'd be better off?
Fox News sure as fuck isn't reporting any of this shit.
None of it. No, there's no question that the corruption in the administration has been far beyond what
he sued the fucking government. He sued his own fucking government.
Yeah, you sound so incredulous. King of douchebags. More.
They can't afford groceries. They can't afford gas prices. They can't afford homes. They can't afford health care. And we're giving $16.2 billion to Israel for just one of those line items. Never mind what we spent on this Israel's war against Iran, which no one wants. No one. The poll numbers on that are over 70% against. And we're not going to help our own people. Those Obamacare subsidized consumers are going to suffer because we have other priorities. It's enraging.
Yes, it's enraging, isn't it? Wow. I mean, they are going hard. I guess the only thing that's impressive is how good they are at acting. Well, let's move on to another clip. This is from Axios co-founder and CEO, I think, Jim Vandehei. He was on MS Now, I think Morning Joe yesterday, and he was just analyzing all of the crazy fever dreams that Dear Leader has in the middle of the night and posts like several an hour, hundreds sometimes overnight. And I thought this was worth sharing. Here it is.
Appreciate that, like whether you laugh, you cringe, or you cheer, these are the unfiltered words of the President of the United States in real time. Everything we know is he's either typing them himself or doing it through an aide. We've never had this in human history where you've had a leader who's telling you in real time what's on his mind. So you should read those things because he's telling you exactly what's on his mind. And I think to a lot of us who think about politics, think about governance, think about this moment, we're like, wow, this is some weird stuff to be fixating on at 1 o'clock in the morning. But it is what he's fixating on. The reason he's fixating it on is he feels trapped right now. He feels like, you know what? I'm crushing it in these elections. Anybody I want elected gets elected. Almost every single member of Congress who has an R next to their name is my person. They'll do whatever I want. Yes, maybe 5 or 6 people break, but I have never been more powerful inside my party. However, outside of that, the walls seem to be closing in. He can't get what he wants in Iran. He can't get what he wants in Ukraine. He can't get what he wants in Gaza. He can't tell the courts how the courts are going to rule on things like the Kennedy Center. So reality's closing in. Even these artists that they, kind of like throwback artists, if you want to be charitable, that are going to be at the 250th anniversary, they're just canceling. They're like, I don't want to be a part of this. Well, he can't control that. So these things that he can't control are closing in. When that happens, this is what he does.
And that is a really good point, that when he can't control the levers of government, and he can't often, he does the only thing he can, which is lash out in every way possible on social media, in front of cameras, to anybody who will listen and not sleep, apparently. All right, let's get to a few clips that I've got for you about the big story yesterday that the slush fund may be no more. First, CNN's Caitlin Collins setting it up with a good couple 2 minutes here, minus the music. I appreciate this. She includes clips, and it's a detailed, I think, look at what's gone on here.
Trump's $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund, as the administration calls it, has been in serious jeopardy ever since it was announced. But now the administration is signaling to Republicans on Capitol Hill that they might be dropping the fund altogether. Now, critics have derided this as a slush fund because the administration has refused to rule out potentially giving payouts to people who assaulted cops on January 6th. It's certainly designed for the president's allies to be able to apply and claim that they were wrongfully targeted by the Justice Department under President Biden. But it has faced serious pushback, not just in the courts, where at least one court has intervened to say that no movement can happen on that fund for the time being. No payments can go out. No one can be appointed to the Board of Commissioners that will decide who gets paid out. But now it's also facing serious pushback from Republicans on Capitol Hill, who say that they won't pass immigration funding until the administration fully commits to dropping it. Now, right now, the president has not gone that far yet, and I'm told that it is not fully dead, and the president could decide to stand by it. But his administration has been signaling to Republicans that they might be willing to back off of it because they've realized just how severe the blowback has been from congressional Republicans who don't want to see this fund put into place.
This is, this is just stupid on stilts. There's no one positive thing that could be spun out of this between now and November.
I do not want $1 of that going to anybody who physically assaulted police officers, period.
Now, 2 courts have gotten involved, one in Virginia, one in Florida, and now the administration is signaling potentially that it could back down after hearing from people like the Republican Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, who said the best move forward here is for the administration to just drop it altogether. Now, it remains to be seen if that happens, but even the president himself, who has an iron grip on his party on most occasions, has been shocked by the blowback that he's faced over this fund.
All right. There is the reporting of it. And now here is some analysis from legal expert Liz Oyer, who I really like. She's a great analyst and very soft-spoken in her videos. I think her delivery is fun. But she actually made history as the first public defender to be appointed to the U.S. pardon as a U.S. pardon attorney. And she had that role in 2022. But then she was fired last year by this regime because she refused to recommend the restoration of firearm rights for actor Mel Gibson. How about that? Because, he's got a domestic violence conviction. Anyway, since her firing, she's become a real vocal critic and a teacher explaining what the hell is going on. And she does a great job in this clip from Liz Oyer.
Something really strange I wanted to jump on here and tell you about something really strange that just happened. It looks like the Justice Department may be canceling Donald Trump's $1.8 billion slush fund. A couple different news outlets are reporting that they are going to abandon it because of political backlash from Republicans. That's great news if it holds. But the alarming part is how they're trying to spin it. DOJ is now blaming the courts for shutting down the fund, even though that did not actually happen. The Justice Department just put out a statement suggesting that a court declared the settlement fund illegal. It says that while DOJ thinks the court is wrong, they are going to abide by the court's decision anyway. This is bizarre in so many ways, starting with the fact that no court actually said the fund is illegal. One court put a pause on it to allow time to consider this issue, but any actual decision is weeks or months away, and then there will be appeals and Supreme Court review, etc. Also, we know this administration does not just give in to court rulings without a fight. If they believed they could win, they would take this all the way up to the Supreme Court. It looks like what's really going on here is that Todd Blanche is desperately trying to save face. He created a political disaster, and now he needs to walk it back without admitting that it's all his fault. On a basic level, it's a good outcome if DOJ cancels this corrupt slush fund, but it's also really disturbing that they're still lying about it. They are so deep in this narrative about blaming the courts for everything that they are now falsely claiming that a court blocked them when it actually didn't. I just wanted to get this out there so that you're not misled about what's actually happening. There is so much misinformation coming out of this administration.
Yeah, she's real good. Very good. So is this guy, Norm Eisen, who's part of, I think, the team that got this thrown out or this judgment.
We are not assuming that these stories today about this heinous slush fund and about the settlement and then one free pass for Trump was not enough. They had to slap on another one, a little caboose. Well, we don't accept that. We're going to court. We're going to make sure we're representing some brave J6 prosecutors. We got a great team, Plotkin LLP, Washington Litigation Group, the Heafy Smith firm, and we're going to make sure that this settlement goes where it should. DOA.
All right. There you go. Norm Eisen, he's a real character and very effective. All right, let's head back to CNN, where last night Abby Phillips was talking to Washington Post columnist Josh Rogan, who's a foreign policy national security guy. Thought this was good.
Do you think Israel wants the United States to get a deal with Iran?
No.
And two, do you think Iran will ever give up its nuclear stuff and its right to have nuclear stuff?
It might give up the dust. It's not going to give up its right to produce more dust. And everybody knows that. And that was the premise of U.S. diplomacy with Iran for 25 years. Trump doesn't just seem to care, which is one reason we don't have a deal. The other reason we don't have a deal, or one of them anyway, is that Iran is not going to declare an end to the war while Israel's still attacking Lebanon. It has to be part of the deal. And, of course, Bibi won't play ball because he doesn't want the war to end. And Trump is just waking up to that fact 3 months into the war, and he's not happy about it. And, you know, a lot of what he's saying is that Bibi should do everything that he says, and now he's learning that that's not the way that the world works. So constantly, over the past 3 months, Trump is confronted by reality, which totally contradicts the made-up story he has about the Iran war in his head. And guess what? In the end, reality is winning out. And that, again, that's why we're in the quagmire we're in, because Trump won't accept the reality. He only wants the world to bend to what's in his head. In this case, he's not getting what he wants, so he's throwing a tantrum.
Yeah, he's throwing a tantrum every day. He's a man-child. A baby, little baby. All right, here is the great Paul Krugman calling for demographication. Oh.
We need to defang Trump as much as possible and make sure that neither he nor anybody who follows in his footsteps has power after the next two elections. But beyond that, we really need to do a thorough purging of the United States. We need a demogrification, and that is, you know, I'm not going over the top by using a word that's very similar to the denazification that we pursued successfully after World War II in Germany.
Yeah, there you go. How about that? Too much? Too far? Too extreme? I don't think so. I don't know how that gets done necessarily, but let's move on to another clip. This is Mary Trump. I don't often play Mary Trump, but I saw this and thought it was pretty good because she was on Velshi, which is how I caught it. Here she is.
It's interesting. I think there's a significant minority of people for whom there is no line. And it's because he is, in their view, working for their self-interest, because these are Nazis. These are white Christian nationalists, and they like what he's doing. And they're willing to pay an economic price in order for those agendas to be pushed through. You know, they love the cruelty towards immigrants, et cetera. But there is still also a significant minority of people who, even though they support him, are deeply upset by his failure to release the Epstein files. They're deeply upset about his unconstitutional war of choice in Iran. And there are other people who will begin to see that economically they are so much worse off because of his incompetence as a leader of the American economy and the ridiculous, ill-informed choices he's made vis-a-vis tariffs and getting us into an unnecessary war.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. All right, well, there you go. Those are all the primary serious clips. Now let's get to a little comedy. I like to start and end. We had Kimmel at the top, and now listen to Seth Meyers, who's back on Late Night on NBC after a 2-week hiatus.
The White House released a 3-page memo on Friday summarizing the results of President Trump's semi-annual physical, and while he's experiencing some mild nausea and loss of appetite, the doctor is expected to make a full recovery. President Trump bragged yesterday that he aced a cognitive check during his recent physical. Okay, for the last time, those aren't given a letter grade. If you saw an A, it was probably hepatitis. That's right, President Trump bragged that he aced a cognitive check during his recent physical and said, quote, "In fact, this is my 4th such test. All perfect. If you're so good at them, why do they keep giving them to you? They don't give you 4 colonoscopies if you're pooping normal." That's right. President Trump bragged that he aced a recent cognitive test and said, quote, 120 correct answers out of 120 questions asked. I don't know how often I have to say it. It's bad when they keep making you take the test, when they keep making the quarterback retake his math exam in hopes of getting him eligible to play Saturday. That kid don't know math. In a new interview with Fox News, President Trump demanded that the Strait of Hormuz be opened, but added, quote, "We don't need the strait," in case anyone was looking for a new slogan for Pride Month. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said last week that his department had designed a new $250 bill with President Trump's image. And not for nothing, but that's the best picture you could get? I would think for $250 he could get a decent haircut. President Trump criticized musicians over the weekend for dropping out of a concert series to celebrate the country's 250th birthday. And do you know how unpopular you have to be for Milli Vanilli to back out? I'm pretty sure I could get them for my birthday. They were famous for a year in the 90s, don't actually sing, and one of them's dead. Donald Trump Jr. recently married his fiancée, Bettina Anderson. Don can't wait for the honeymoon, and Bettina can't be forced to testify against him. That's about right. After getting married last month in the Bahamas in a small private ceremony, Donald Trump Jr. and Bettina Anderson are reportedly planning a larger celebration for later this year. Man, how many weddings are you going to make this guy avoid? And finally, in a recent post on X, U.S. Ambassador to Greece, Kimberly Guilfoyle, celebrated a new McDonald's location in Athens and called it a, quote, "the most technologically advanced McDonald's in all of Europe," which just means the ice cream machine works.
All right, there you go. That is the clip show. Thank you very much for being here. And let's get now to my conversation with Professor Eric Segall, con law professor over at Georgia State University, author of a couple great books. You've got a podcast that has a great archive, and he's got a new job at the Georgia State Center for Constitutional Law, Practice, and Democracy, where he, I believe, is the executive director. Yeah, that's pretty busy, keeping him pretty busy. Also, it was his birthday yesterday, and so reach out to him and wish him a happy birthday. Thank him for joining us. Let's do it right now with the Legal Eagle. Happy birthday to you. You are spending it with me. That's sad.
It's not sad because you're one of my closest friends, and I love spending time with you. And frankly, we don't get to spend enough time together.
And you also love doing this. You love educating people and sharing your insightful expertise with us. As a matter of fact, you did an interview earlier, and you were telling me, because I asked you what you do for your birthday. You went out to lunch with your daughter, and
there's this sushi buffet place in Atlanta that's very upscale, and she loves it. It's about 30 minutes away. And so we go there on special occasions, and it was just she and I, and it was really fun and special.
And you have two other children you will not spend any time with on your birthday.
We're having a big barbecue rib dinner that my wife Lynn is making. It's my favorite dish she makes. They are the best barbecue ribs in the galaxy.
I look forward to you sharing pictures, at least with the stand-up community, if not publicly on social media. But maybe you shouldn't, because you'll get harangued for eating that. But happy birthday. And your daughter, when you went out to lunch with her, you got a call from Bloomberg to do an interview, and then you neglected her for 25 minutes.
No. That's not what happened. I have been writing a lot and talking a lot about this judge in Atlanta. We think she's a judge in Atlanta who had sex in her chambers in the earshot of her law clerks, went to a partisan event and did all kinds of other things. So Bloomberg called me about that right before we left with kind of a time sensitivity. So I said to Sarah, do you mind if I talk to Bloomberg on the way out to the restaurant? No, Dad, of course not. So I gave this 20-minute interview or so, did my usual ranting. I hung up, and Sarah very innocently, and she just got accepted at Northwestern. She's going there in the fall. She wants to go to law school. I've tried to talk her out of it. I failed. She's law school bound. But anyway, she said to me, Dad, don't you like people just calling you up and asking you your opinions? I thought that was funny. She was very sweet.
Not only is it funny, it's such a thoughtful thing for her to just mention, and it must have made you feel amazing, because like you get to perform. It's not so often that a parent gets to perform their job or work in front of their child, and even if they do, that it's interesting or impressive. So that's the case, and probably has a lot to do with why your daughter's going to go to law school.
I don't know, but it was nice, and then we ended up doing some tangents on things like racist law clerks and other things, and it was fun.
Today we are talking about two subjects. What is left for the court to decide in this term, the big cases that remain, and a special someone that you have had a bee in your bonnet about for a long time that we all should know about. But quickly, what is important about that case where a federal judge?
Oh, you want to go in reverse order? You want to start with the law clerk and then go to the current term?
No, the sex one that you interviewed. Why is that? Is that important? Bloomberg wants to talk about it. I'm sure it gets ratings. Right. I'm sure but you've been talking about it a lot, so I wanted to ask you about it.
No, actually, I wrote a piece on Dorf on Law last week about it, and the AP called me last week, and they were fabulous. They printed everything I said, so that went out to 100 newspapers or whatever.
Great.
In case you haven't heard, an unidentified judge. All we knew was this judge was somewhere. Was a federal trial judge in Alabama, Georgia, or Florida, because the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, the court right below the Supreme Court, has jurisdiction over those 3 states. And the chief judge of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, a guy named Bill Pryor, who I have had very public criticism of, and who was a terrible judge and a terrible person. Bill Pryor was the head of a committee that investigated an identified judge for having sex in their chambers in the earshot of law clerks, and attended a partisan political event. Lower court federal judges are not allowed to go to partisan political events. That doesn't apply to the Supreme Court because nothing applies to the Supreme Court. But federal trial judges and federal court of appeal, I know Pete, federal court of appeals, Pete's shaking his head because how can it not apply to the Supreme Court? Nothing applies to the Supreme Court. But anyway, so the story came out last week, and she didn't really get punished. She got kind of a slap on the wrist, and she wasn't identified. And that was the problem, because this judge did an irresponsibly bad thing. The law clerks complained. There were other bad things, like attending this partisan event. Also, the way she handled her chambers, the law clerks complained about. And she got called out by this Judicial Review Committee for all of those things, but they never identified her, which united left and right in America. Josh Blackman, crazy right-wing law professor, always in the news. Josh and I agree on this. The name of this judge should have been revealed. Now, it turns out we have figured out who it is because there were enough clues in the descriptions to narrow it down to a particular city and a particular time and a particular gender. It turns out it's a female judge in Atlanta appointed by Obama. And now we don't officially know that, Pete. So now Bloomberg has reported her name, but it's not official. And my point about this whole disaster was, who judges the judges? That's the name of my blog post. Who judges the judges when they act badly? And the answer is other judges. That's always a problem, right? They're investigating themselves. And they basically, I don't know what they were thinking to this moment in time. I mean, everybody's writing stories about this. AP, Bloomberg, everybody. It's, 3:13 on Monday, days after the story broke. And there's still no official confirmation from the investigators who this person is. And that's a crazy way to run a system. Because she did something objectively wrong. There's another part of the story real quick that I'm the only person talking about, and I'm the only person writing.
Oh.
The law clerks complained about numerous things. Biggest thing, having sex in her chambers where the law clerks could hear the noises. That's bad. 2, she attended a partisan political
What if they
event.
couldn't hear the noises, but people knew they were having sex in there? It'd still be bad, right? If people knew that you shouldn't have sex in your chamber or at work. Yes. I would say you should almost never have sex at work with someone. It's rarely.
It was also with a uniformed police officer, apparently. So that's a problem, too.
That makes it, I'll tell you what, it makes it hotter. Judge in a robe and a cop.
But people, and she's married, of course, so this is. But people are writing about all of that stuff. Really, it's a national story now. What no one is, I've asked Bloomberg, I've asked AP, maybe Bloomberg will write about this. I don't know. The law clerks also complained that the judge did not care at all about civil cases, that she was so busy, and this is fair and to this point, that her criminal docket is so heavy, and law clerks can't really help out with criminal cases. That's a jury trial where the judge has to be in the court. So all of these civil cases, these big commercial, this is Atlanta, Georgia, there's a huge civil docket. The way that works is basically motions are filed. The law clerk gets the motions, writes up a draft, or does the research, summarizes the facts, writes up the actual opinion deciding the case, and the judge signed it. And this judge said that she only edits 30 to 40% of those. I clerked for the same court in 1983. I have friends who have clerked for the same a judge in this court for 50 years. I know a lot of people who clerk. All of the judges in America who work at the trial level. I'm not talking about Court of Appeals judges. I'm not talking about the Supreme Court. I'm talking about federal trial courts. They all do this, Pete. They don't decide civil cases. Their law clerks do. And I can't get anyone to talk about this. I have been very successful in my career in getting lawyers and judges and students together.
Maybe include more sex in it. The civil versus the criminal at the docket. It's a really important point. I knew I wanted to ask you about it because I knew that if you had been talking about it a lot, it must have been consequential for other reasons than just the ethics around.
So when I was a law clerk, I was 25 years old. I knew nothing. I was stupid. I never practiced law a day in my life. I loved my judge, but he had the same. He's passed away, but he had the same pattern that this judge has. That 98% of the 700, however many federal district court judges there are all over the country. I would pick up a very complicated, difficult, dispositive, meaning case could end motion in a complex commercial transaction in an area of law I knew nothing about. And my job was to write the order deciding the motion. Then the judge would review it. He never changed it, almost never. And this is going on in federal courtrooms all over the country. And I just want to make this one point. For 20 years at my law school, I ran a group that brought together judges, lawyers, and students to talk about ethical, professional, legal issues. Now, it's called Inn of Court. All law schools have it. Most of those Inn of Court programs, Pete, are devoted to professional issues. But because of my con law stuff, I was able to talk about abortion, affirmative action, sodomy when Lawrence versus Texas came out 25 years ago. They would not let me talk about this issue. And I love these people. These judges and lawyers were my friends.
Why?
Because nobody was willing to talk about it.
Why?
Because the dirty secret is not judges, law clerks decide civil motions in federal court. 25-year-old law clerks who know.
What does that mean? A law clerk is deciding a civil motion. What does that mean?
I just explained it. So let's say Exxon is suing Shell or whatever, and it's a complicated antitrust suit or whatever it is. Doesn't matter. Somebody makes a motion to dismiss the case or a motion for summary judgment, which, if granted, ends the case. The judge has never heard of nor seen this case. It is a file, used to be a file, now it might be a computer file, I don't know. But it's a file on a shelf. You pick it up, you read the briefs, you read the pleadings, you look at the exhibits, whatever, and the law clerk, not the judge, writes the order. Motion granted, motion denied.
Wow, I didn't know. Why would that be?
No one knows this. It's driving me nuts. And in this judge in Atlanta, who did the Sex in the Chambers thing, her law clerks complained that she never really looked at their civil orders. She just signed them. And when she said 30 to 40% of the time she edited them. The law clerks did not accept that. But even if that's true, it doesn't matter. It's not true. But even if it was, it doesn't matter. It's law clerks deciding the cases. That's a big deal. Now, I used to have conversations, sorry to bring them up, it's been a while, with my friend Judge Posner.
Oh, Drinky Poo, get your drink out. It's a Posner reference.
I once interviewed Posner for the New York Review of Books. Okay. And the most controversial thing the public thought he said in that was he said most law clerks are smarter than their judges. Leave that aside for the moment. There's an argument that a 25-year-old scared law clerk like me in 1983 is a better vehicle to decide these issues than a 60-year-old judge who's seen it all, right? Is a little bit, I don't think that's true. But even if it were, we should have a public debate about it. But no one is willing to admit this is what's happening until today, until this story.
Well, this is yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. But Bill, I've been able to inject into public discourse virtually any issue I wanted to, including, we may get to or not today, this incredibly racist law clerk who Justice Thomas hired. But this issue, I cannot get lawyers, judges to talk about it. They won't talk about it. So that's a big part of the story. I'm hoping someone talks about that part of the story because it's in the official report. The law clerks complained she wasn't paying attention to civil cases. She wasn't, but none of them do. So it's kind of a crazy world in that way. Anyway,
want to get you to respond to some breaking news.
Yes. Ooh, yes.
Trump reportedly to drop $1.8 billion weaponization fund. By the way, I never get anything right, but I do a bit where I say I always get it right. I have no credibility on predictions. I'm not an expert on anything. That's why I have you here. But I did say I didn't think anybody would ever get $1, and we shouldn't be spending too much time worrying about it. We should be spending all our time talking about it because it's egregious. And that way we push back against it, hopefully, and there's a development. But I wanted people to be like, this is so deeply gross and offensive to think that this is happening, and we have to do everything we can to stop it. But it's also not going to happen because of us in this case. And that would argue that's part of the reaction as to why across the spectrum. But what is your much better reaction to the news that Trump reportedly to drop $1.8 billion weaponization fund?
Yeah, I have two breaking news. I didn't know. So this is off the cuff, not prepared. Two reactions. I thought, and I said last week to several people, I know people who don't care about politics or don't want to care because it's so depressing and all that stuff. This one got their attention. This was so horrible and so terrible that it deserved. You froze and you look like you're about to throw up. Sorry.
No, the internet didn't freeze. That was just me feeling nauseous about this whole idea. Yeah, go ahead.
I do think this was different, almost different in kind than all of his other men. So I'm glad that happened. I'm not surprised either because even McConnell came out and said this is awful, I think, didn't he? Everybody.
Yes.
However, Donald Trump doesn't lose in his brain. So I do not think this is the end of this.
All right. Well, that's a more psychological prediction than
he'll find a way to try to do this.
I agree. The most important part of his psychology for people to understand around the world is his deep, as he said about it long before he became president, that if anybody ever crosses him, he will get revenge. Like his vengeance is what motivates him each and every day. And so if you understand that, it's a little bit easier to understand what kind of a human being.
Just to throw a monkey wrench in all this, because again, I haven't thought through it. I'm actually not sure that it's great that this has gone away so quickly, because I actually heard some of his spokespeople trying to defend this, and it was so obviously they didn't believe it. Like no one believed the defense.
You mean you wish that bad news lingered around a little bit more to affect people's perception of who he is? It's an interesting point to make, but it's also like the trade war and gas price. Like all political punditry is almost a waste if we're not only talking about the price of gas. Let's just focus on it's a 4, 5, or 6 where you live, and how does that make you feel?
Yeah. Let's move to the Supreme Court because there's something I want to say that I didn't really remember until an hour ago. I know this, but it's such a horrific thing that I still can't believe it's happening. But this is funny. So one of the big decisions the court, it's not funny, it's tragic. So the court has a lot of big decisions coming in June. One of the biggest ones, Pete, is this redistricting debate problem in Alabama. A 3-judge court, the punchline of this is good. You like it. A 3-judge court in Alabama last week, 2 Trump appointees of the 3, but all 3, said that Alabama wants to use a map that is the product of intentional racial discrimination against black people. That is still illegal. Even though the court has gutted the Voting Rights Act, that is still an illegal thing to do, to intentionally discriminate against black people in voting. And again, 2 Trump judges said that's what Alabama did. Alabama takes an immediate appeal to the Supreme Court, emergency appeal, based on the Calais decision you and I talked about that came out a few weeks ago. One of the things that the other side said was the timing of this makes it impossible to really change things now. And one of the reasons the timing is impossible is there's some kind of June 2nd deadline under state law. June 2nd is, I'm not sure when you're going to, this is live. When you replay this, it may be on June 2nd.
Yeah, it'll definitely be, for people watching live, it's tomorrow. Yeah. And for people listening, it's today.
Right. Here's the amazing thing. One of the complications is Alabama's closed today. today. No one works in Alabama.
Oh, is it Confederate Celebration Day?
It's Jefferson Davis's fucking birthday. Germany makes it a crime to depict a swastika.
In Washington, D.C., they got rid of Black Lives Matter Plaza because of Trump, got rid of it, and replaced it, in its place, put a Confederate general statue that had never been there. The argument used to be like they took him down to keep him up, which is a horrific argument. But this guy was never even there. They just introduced a new old Confederate general.
But you have to understand, Alabama is going to the Supreme Court trying to discriminate against black people. And the reason that the timing is a problem is, we can't work on Monday, June 1st because we're celebrating Jefferson Davis's birthday. And the Supreme Court saying racism is a thing of the past. I mean, first of all, I can't move past this. Of course, all over the South, there's Jefferson Davis Highway, Charles, there's everything. But it's an official state holiday for Jefferson Davis in 2026. Pete, what the fuck?
You're against that. Let's talk about other cases that remain. Sure. There are two subjects that I really want to talk about. We haven't even got to, and we're already 20 minutes in. The most important cases yet to be decided, and a particular law clerk that has had an amazing career. If you go look at her LinkedIn, she's worked for every major white supremacist, including the leading black white supremacist, arguably. So we'll get to that. That's a teaser. Okay. But first, let's head to how many cases are remaining that are really important and consequential. The most important cases yet to be decided here in June.
Too many for us to talk about unless we had like 3 hours. But the birthright citizenship case is obviously on everybody's minds. My guess is that'll be the last case to come out on June 30th or so. And I think the court is going to I think the court's going to do the right thing there. Okay. The court is not going to uphold Trump's executive order. But that's a huge case coming. There were two huge firing cases. Trump wanted to fire Lisa Cook of the Federal Reserve, and I think the court is not going to allow him to do that, while at the same time, the Federal Trade Commissioner, as was also fired, Rebecca Slaughter, they are going to let the FTC, Trump, fire her. This is a complicated separation of powers question, but the bottom line is this. Congress set up independent agencies to have some degree of flexibility and independence from the president so they could do their job correctly. The way they do that is saying the president can't fire these people unless he has good cause. The president can fire the Secretary of State for any reason, obviously, but he cannot fire the heads of independent agencies for any reason. The court is going to hold that Congress is not allowed to do that. That is a living constitutionalist, anti-originalist, fantasy world created by the Supreme Court. But they're going to make an exception to that for the Federal Reserve Board, but there won't be any legal justification for making that exception. What the justices are doing is they know that the markets will react very negatively if Trump is allowed to fire a member of the Fed for any reason, and their pocketbooks will be affected. So my guess is they're going to not allow him to do that. There's two big election cases.
Their pocketbooks is particularly potentially their sponsors financially.
Yes, two of them, at least two of them.
Your Harlan Crows.
Don't get me started. See, that's the problem. You keep getting me on tangent. There's so much to talk about.
Harlan Crow had not been around the Duke boys very long.
Oh my God, Pete.
Okay, so those are the two.
I'm going to say it again. Okay, so what I said by the way, sorry, let's stop right there for a second. I did say to Bloomberg today, this entire fuss about this federal judge who clearly acted badly and deserves to be reprimanded or something for it. In a world where Clarence Thomas has taken from Harlan Crow money for his mother's house, his kids' tuition, his wife's salary, luxury trips, and his motorhome, an interest-free loan that was never repaid, or so it seems. What she did is very minor compared to the corruption of Justice Clarence Thomas. I'm not defending her. It's a bad thing she did. It is nothing compared to Justice Thomas. So
I'm glad you mentioned it. That's a great point. Yes. So, okay. So we got the birthright citizenship. You mentioned the two firing cases. What else remains?
We have mail-in ballots. Mississippi wants to count ballot. Mississippi, not New York or California here. Red state Mississippi wants to count ballots that are postmarked before Election Day, but come in within 5 days of Election Day. The Republican Party is trying to stop that. Now, to be clear, this is not a constitutional case. It's a case about a federal statute that the Supreme Court has to interpret. But for a very long time, it's been interpreted to allow the counting of mail-in ballots after Election Day. The court is going to do something in that case. I don't know what. Congress could always change it in theory, but that's 2/3. Who knows? And then the much bigger election. And this case has fallen under the radar, Pete, for reasons I don't understand. This is like a Citizens United type moment. Right now, there are limitations under federal law on political parties and candidates pooling their money to support the candidate. There's limits on expenditures. The party can raise its own money and act independently of the candidate, but there is limits on what they can do together in coordination. The Republican Party sued to change that. That's a big case, and the court is going to rule for the Republican Party in that case. And just to make a long story short, it's going to usher even more money into our elections. Terrible. So that's coming up. There are cases involving trans women on sports teams. Those are coming. The court is going to rule that states are allowed to ban trans women being on sports teams. You and I have talked about it before. And then finally, there are actually two pretty big gun cases that are also flying under the radar in this. And we've talked about them on your show before. But one case involves a very rational, sensible law that Hawaii passed that says if you own a private commercial establishment, a bowling alley, a restaurant, whatever, the default is people cannot bring guns onto your property unless you give them permission. That's the rule. The Supreme Court is going to strike that down as unconstitutional.
So now in Hawaii, you'll be able to bring your gun anywhere?
No, in Hawaii, the owner of the store has to put up a sign saying no guns allowed, as opposed to the default being no guns allowed. And that's nuts. That's just crazy. And then the second case involves drug users who use guns. Federal law makes it a crime to own a gun if you use drugs. That's a more complicated case, and that's a tough one because using drugs is not defined in the statute.
Oh.
So we have everything. We have election law, separation of powers law, education law to trans women on sports teams, money in elections, guns. It's all coming, and 90% of it is going to be terrible. The birthright citizenship case, they'll probably do the correct thing, but who knows?
All right, that is what is remaining on the Supreme Court. We're so lucky to have your interpretation of it to join us. Finally, though, you want to tell us about this particular law clerk who you've been following not only a law clerk, for her career. She's worked for some of the greatest worst people, and not enough people know about her, and not too many people followed her like you have, but I think it's really important. We've talked about her before, but I think she's got a new position.
Well, hold on. This is not a story about her. I want to be very clear.
Oh, it's not? Well, it's a story about the powers that be that bring her in. And
it's 10 times bigger than her. Let me tell the story. People will get it.
All right. Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Remember this phrase. That's not who I am. Remember that phrase.
That's not who I am. Like a little teaser about what we're about to learn about this person.
In 2017, Jane Mayer, who writes for The New Yorker.
One of the most respected investigative journalists in the country. She won all the awards.
And she wrote a book called Dark Money. She was on to the whole Leonard Leo dark money thing before anybody else was. She's a great reporter and a great person. In 2017, she reports that a woman named Crystal Clanton, who worked for Turning Point USA, that is Charlie Kirk's old company, worked for Turning Point USA, sent a text message that, among other things, said, "I'm done. I'm finished. I hate all black people. I fucking hate them." Now, this is Jane Mayer reporting in The New Yorker. This is not Segall and Dominick talking on a podcast. This is Jane Mayer in The New Yorker magazine.
Quote, "I hate black people, like fuck them all."
Yes. Turning Point fires her 2 days later. And with some general comment about we don't tolerate that kind of racism here or something like that. She publicly says one thing and one thing only. She doesn't deny saying it. She does not deny saying it. Jane has the text.
If she didn't say it, she would sue Jane Mayer. in the New Yorker. And if she didn't say it, Jane Meyer in the New Yorker would.
I've seen the text message.
Oh,
okay.
Right. Well, you would have because of who you know, but also
that.
Yeah. Oh, did you freeze or me? You froze, but I'm still here. He'll be back, everybody. Take a quick break.
What happened there?
You glitched. You had a seizure and you went to heaven, and now you're back.
That's not true. I believe you had the seizure. But in any event,
you think it's my internet, or it wasn't your internet?
Yes, it wasn't my end.
Go ahead. So sure.
That's not who I am. That's her response. Okay. Doesn't deny saying. Somehow, within a few months after being fired from Turning Point for these racist text messages, she is living with Ginny and Clarence Thomas in their house. In their house. She then starts working for Ginny Thomas in her, in her political thing she does. Wait, this is amazing. So that goes on for about a year. What I learned, and I knew this already, then she enrolls in Antonin Scalia Law School in Virginia, one of the top 35 ranked law schools in America. Used to be called George Mason Law School. I still call it George Mason Law School. It's Scalia Law. And what I just learned was, and she got a full scholarship, 100% scholarship to Scalia Law.
Wow.
So that goes, after her first year, Justice Thomas, who she's lived with for at least a year, calls up the chief judge of the 11th Circuit, Bill Pryor, the same Bill Pryor we were talking about at the beginning of this podcast, who oversaw the investigation of the judge having sex in her chambers, and says to Judge Pryor, you should hire her. She's really good. Bill Pryor says to Clarence Thomas, I've already hired my law clerks for it'd be 2 years. The way it works is 2 years in advance. I've already hired my law clerks for that year, but I will get her. I will encourage a district court judge in Alabama to hire her, and then she can come to me after that. Now, just so your audience knows, getting a federal clerkship out of law school is one of the great career-enhancing things for lawyers' resumes. It's hard to get. They are very competitive. Now, she was top 5% of her class. She had great grades. I have to give her that. But it's still very competitive. A district court judge in Alabama offers her a clerkship. She goes there for a year. Then she goes to work for Judge Pryor for a year. And while she's working for Judge Pryor, the chief judge of the 11th Circuit, who sits in Montgomery, Alabama, and everyone in that courthouse knew that she said and never denied saying, I hate black people. I fucking hate all black people. She did say, that's not me. That's the one thing she said. Clarence Thomas offers her a job. So stop right there. Thomas has publicly said she's like my adopted daughter. So now that's not, I don't think what she is, but that's what he says. He's giving his adopted daughter the most precious gift a young lawyer can get, a Supreme Court clerkship. Never having denied that she said, I hate all black people. She goes to work for Clarence Thomas. It's unbelievable. And I learned, and then the news broke last week. David Latt, who people should know, David Latt is this very famous writer about everything involving courts in America. He also was one of the first public people in America to get COVID, and he filmed his entire COVID thing he's an amazing guy, and it's an amazing thing. David reported last week, he said, what happened to Crystal Clanton after the Thomas clerkship? Because most people who get Supreme Court clerkships do one of two things. They go teach, or they go to, big Wall Street law firms. She did neither of those things. The woman who said, it's not who I am, after being quoted as saying she hates all black people, is now working for, drum roll please, Stephen Miller's law firm, which is doing nothing but going around the country suing companies and states.
Who is Stephen Miller's law firm? Steve Miller works in the Trump administration.
No, Steve Miller had a law firm before he was in the Trump administration. Oh. And their sole mission in life is to sue people for not hiring enough white people. That's what they do. They're involved in dozens of cases, suing states, schools, and private companies for racial discrimination against, white people. Now let's go back. That's not who I am, is what she said. Now she's working basically for Stephen Miller.
Here's that line at abovethelaw.com. Attorney, infamous for texting, quote, "I hate black people," lands at Stephen Miller linked law shop, comma, because of course she did. Crystal Clanton didn't derail her career. She followed it exactly where it was always heading.
So, Pete, you come out nationally as saying I hate all black people.
Well, she didn't come out nationally as saying that.
Say again?
She didn't come out nationally as saying that. We found out that she said
it. Well, but she didn't deny it.
Well,
and what she gets for that is the most coveted prize a lawyer can get, which is clerking for the Supreme Court of the United States. And, by the way, a huge part of this story, relevant again to the judge who sleeps and had sex in her chambers, is Jamie Raskin and 7 other or 8 other members of the House of Representatives sent a letter to Justice Roberts about her working for Judge Pryor. This is before she got the Thomas clerkship. And they said to Justice Roberts, this is a stain on the federal court system. They've hired a woman who said, I hate all black people. What about the employees in that courthouse? Many of whom are black, obviously, in Montgomery, Alabama. And so Justice Roberts had no choice but to instigate an investigation into what happened, which he did. And he assigned that investigation to a judge named Judge Livingston, a woman, Deborah Livingston, of a different court of appeals, because you can't have Judge Pryor's 11th Circuit investigate Judge Pryor. They had a different court of appeals investigate Judge Pryor. The task was, what happened here? How did she get hired? And the first time around, well, she admitted that the judge who investigated it never asked the woman whether she made those statements, and never asked Judge Pryor if he asked her if Judge Pryor made those statements. What Pryor said was, Justice Thomas told me that he didn't think she was a racist, and that was enough for me. Wait a minute. Wait, not done. Sorry, I got to go 2 more minutes.
Oh, go ahead.
That order comes out saying we clear Judge Pryor of any impropriety in the investigation of clearing, of this woman. But they didn't really investigate it, and it took 13 days, 4 of which were weekends. So then the Congress people, not Segall, but Jamie Raskin and other people, write to Roberts again and say, this was a cover-up. No one investigated anything. Roberts then says, okay, we'll look into it again. And he says to Judge Livingston, do this over again. You didn't do it right the first time. And then nothing happens for a year. Nothing happens for a year.
Shocking.
Then Judge Livingston issues like a 1-page order saying, pursuant to arguments made by the Chief Judge of the 11th Circuit, Bill Pryor, we have now concluded we don't have jurisdiction to reopen this case. And they didn't do the second investigation. Judge Pryor closed it down by making a maybe persuasive legal argument about the technicalities of opening up a second investigation based on various time limits in the code and all this shit, all of which are waivable. So the question is, why did Judge Pryor close this investigation? And we all know the answer to that question. So what do you get for being a racist in America? You get full tuition at Scalia Law, living with a Supreme Court justice, then working for a Supreme Court justice. But it's not who I am.
It's not who I am. Catherine Rubino is a senior editor at Above the Law, wrote that piece I quoted from. At the end of it, she just writes, Crystal Clanton's career is a reminder that in some corners of the conservative legal movement, far from being a deal breaker, a racist scandal can actually be a resume enhancer.
It certainly was here. And my final note on this, I want to repeat something I think I said the last time we talked, but in case I didn't, I need to say it again. I came across a quote by Justice Clarence Thomas I had not seen before that has one of the worst sentences in the history of the Supreme Court. just have. There are 3 generations of imbeciles is enough, is a famous line written by somebody. Separate but equal is terrible, obviously. But this is what Justice Thomas wrote. Let's go back to Alabama and voting rights. This was the very same case that's before the Supreme Court now, in an earlier version of that case. And it was a voting rights case about Alabama. And Justice Thomas dissented because the court, this is the case the court basically reversed 3 weeks ago in the Calais case. So in the case 3 weeks ago, Thomas is in the majority. But this is 4 years ago, and he's dissenting. And this is what he said. He said, the majority says this and this. It may be that minority groups in America can never, that's his word, never elect the leaders of their choice. After all, they are a minority.
You.
That's what he wrote.
In the live chat, the very funny longtime listener, Benny Alexander, says, and I don't know if this is true, but I didn't know this. The name of Stephen Miller's former law firm is Are We Racist and How? And he also said that conservatives have DEI for mediocre, racist white people. Well done, Benny. Thank you for everybody watching live. Most importantly, thank you and happy birthday. I'm ending on a positive note with all of that to say I cherish our friendship above almost anything else. And I am so grateful every time I get to learn from you and hear your point of view. And I wish you nothing but the best here on your 52nd. And I adore you.
I'll take it.
Have a good time tonight. What else?
Back at you, Pete. It's 68, but I don't really count it. Only zeros and fives count at my age. Now, you and I have been doing this now for, I believe, 14 years, I think. And it's one of the joys of my life.
You're a national treasure and a great friend to me and so many others. I appreciate you so much. Happy birthday. Have a great time with everybody tonight.
Thank you, Pete. Love you, buddy.
Joining us now, Crystal Clanton. We'll be right back. All right, there he goes, the legal eagle, Eric Segall. Go wish him a happy birthday. I love to make him laugh, and I love having him in my life and bringing him into yours as well. He is our friend. He is in Atlanta. Go see him. Go say hi. All right, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I cannot do it without you. Patreon.com/Pete Dominick. The show is actually free, but it is not cheap. Labor costs are high. Put a lot into it. So sign up now if you're not already a paid subscriber. But if you're listening here at the end, you probably are. You're a bumblebee. You're one of the best. I'm happy to have you. Hope you're doing okay here on a Tuesday. And I look forward to seeing you on Thursday night at our hangout. And I will talk to you later.
When the tyrants taunt you and the sirens teach you, better stand up. Stand up. Let the brave meet the challenge. Let the weak flee. Oh, you better stand up. Stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up on your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. You got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up. Stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. straw and all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to know, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be told up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.